Okay, so here is another week with the worm factory. This is that top layer. This was the one that had a lot of rabbit bedding, and it's got a lot of cardboard in here, but all the food scraps are gone. There's not a lot of worms in here, and I'm thinking it's because it didn't have a top tray on, or it wasn't really covered except for the little lid. But you can see it's not too wet. Okay, here's the other one. Now this is much better. This is kind of the way I would like to see it. Lots of worms. The texture feels nice. You know, it's wet, but not too wet. They've eaten all the food. Now remember, it's been 2 weeks since I really fed most of the trays. And I don't like to overfeed, but I'm getting in here, mix it up real good. You can see there's lots of worms. This one got a lot of cardboard. I see that there's a little bit of fruit flies. It's starting to warm up, and sometimes that happens. This was the food corner. They've eaten most of the food. There's still a lot of cardboard. And because these trays have a lot of bedding material in here, like this week, I'm not going to put any cardboard. I could maybe put some paper, but again, I don't want to overload them with carbon. And this is the bottom one. And then this was the layer that we just started, and you can see, and I did feed it, so there is some food there, but you can see that there is some worms in there. They've started to come. Still kind of dry, but I'm not going to add any water because I'm just going to keep it at the bottom. And today, got my food scraps. So today with the food scraps is I have a mixture of processed, just all different food scraps. And then there was a bag of pumpkin that I processed. So again, I'm going to keep this one at the bottom, clear out a corner, give a good handful, cover it up. Put the next one, put a corner. Give a handful. And then I like to, make sure it's mixed up, but also flat. In this one, I can see these worms are breeding. Can you see how they're kind of tangled up? But you can see lots of happy fat worms. It's just starting to warm up, so they will be eating more and they will be breeding more. And if you notice, I'm not feeding a lot of food, and that's because I have so many trays. It's not like, you know, I have just one tray. Because I have so many, I just put a handful in each one or 2 handfuls in each one. But overall, it is a lot of food. Then this one, I'm going to put a handful of eggshells. You can see them here. I've really finely grind these in the food processor, and I'm just going to sprinkle it on top. They need that grit from the eggshells to help them digest. And then this was the one that the finished bin that I took out last week. I really should cover this, so I might get some batting to cover this, or do another one as a finished tray. But I still feel like most of these trays have a lot more room in them, so I don't have one in this bin to put up as a finished one. But here's some batting. So I have like this kind of stuff that I can put in there and kind of cover it up, because the worms don't like light. Well, that was the first bin, and let's take a look into the second bin. Okay, so this is the second bin. Let's take a look and see how this one's doing. So this one has a top one that I am trying to finish off. So again, I will still get in there, mix it up, loosen it up. I can still see a few worms. So, piece of plastic. Actually, this one is looking pretty good. There's not that many worms in here. But I am going to just leave it because I don't need it right now. Okay. Here is another layer, and this one had the rabbit bedding not that long ago. I can still see some of the alfalfa. Lots of worms. All the food is gone. It's nice texture, not too wet. And as you notice, like last week I didn't feed or give cardboard. This week I'll feed, because as you can see, there's no food scraps left. But since there is still a lot of cardboard, I'm not going to put any, but just look how many worms there are. Lots and lots of worms. And you can see how full it gets. This one's getting close to being done. Look at all these worms. And this is getting closer to the bottom, so I can feel this is getting more wet. But just look how many worms. See, look at all those. And this is what you want to see. You can see all different sizes. And again, like this bin is getting pretty full. Just loosen it up. Still a good amount of cardboard. Now you can hear how wet this one is. And this was the one that has had rabbit bedding, the most recent. But it's really breaking down. And like you can, I don't know if you can hear how wet that is. It's probably getting a little too wet. So that's why I moved the bottom trays to the top. So I always check this one, make sure it's not too wet. There's not worms in here trying to escape. Now, one of the things with having these worm factories that I struggled with for a long time was how to keep the worms from not going down here. And what I learned, if you keep it a good airflow or a gap, it really helps with keeping the worms from trying to go down there. So this was the top one. I'll pick a corner. Good handful. Here's the next one. Do the opposite corner. Good handful. Flatten it out. I'm going to do the eggshells in this one. Put the next one. So, the worms are doing really good. I'm happy. I've gotten, in this one, quite a few bins are pretty full. And now that, gardening season is going to really be picking up, I'll be using the worm castings pretty regularly in my garden. So I just mix them in a 5-gallon bucket with water, and then I water the plants with them. Once a week, once every other week, couple weeks, depending on what stage my plants are at. If I feel like they need a little more fertilizing. So I'll do another corner. Give a good handful. Flatten it out. This is the top one. Be my finished one. Okay, so that is this week with the worm factories. I would love to hear from you. If you have a worm factory, if you've learned something that you think will be good for you in the videos. And thank you very much.